Thank you, Pat. So yeah, as Pat mentioned, we've got Mike McDonough, who is our VMware Senior Director with EVO Rail, and also Matt Kennedy, who is a sales engineer with Dell around the data center. And just real quickly, the concepts we're going to be covering today is the software-defined data center, a real quick primer on that, and then what the typical challenges and approaches are around the software-defined data center. Then we'll move quickly into the VMware EVO Rail solution. Mike will take you through all of that. Some use cases to show exactly how the technology can be used. And then this concept of being better together. Matt Kennedy will introduce the Dell engineered solution and explain to you how that works together so well with EVO Rail. And then I'll just give you a real quick update on data networks. So with that, Mike, I am going to advance the slide and I'm going to turn this over to you as the presenter.
Terrific. Thank you so much. Pat, thank you for that warm welcome. Brad, thank you as well for going through the agenda. And Matt, I look forward to toss it to you at the back end. So for those of you out there, what I'm going to do is spend about 30 minutes kind of taking you through a little bit of a journey to make sure you understand some of the concepts here. We'll say some new vocabulary words because someone once told me assume nothing. Make sure you level set people. Then what I'll do is I'll spend some time about the VMware and our vision of what we're trying to accomplish here, specifically for the marketplace. And then what I'll do is just bring it all together and say what's most important to you or what I think is important for you to take away, and I'll pass it over to Matt. So with that, let me just give you a quick background of why I think this is important to you. So first of all, my name is Mike McDonough. I'm a Senior Director. I'm one of the founders of EVO Rail. Wrote the business case, and I run the business development for the business or outwardly facing globally. And I know we have really two groups of people out here today. We have heavy K through 12, we'll say education, and we might have some more commercial or some other outside of that as well, but mostly K through 12. And so what I'd like to begin with to say that this product fits both ends of the marketplace. And as I spend some time with you, I'm going to talk a little about two customers here and why they move forward with it. One is a very large school district in California who had a really strong visionary CTO, and he was part of it. And when we started hearing these rumors, he found his way to my desk, and this happened at the very inception of our vision. And he saw that this type of technology could really differentiate his school district and enable his school district to do better education and save money and things along those lines. And that school district is Oakland Unified School District, OUSD. It is one of the largest school districts in the state of California. And so he has been along this ride with us, and I encourage you to go out and actually see John or actually see his videos. He's done multiple videos as a visionary of hyper-converged. So that's one in the K through 12. And the other one I'll spend a little time with is a large public organization in the defense in Europe, who actually and why they bought it. So I'll talk a little bit about that. So with that being said, we have about a half an hour or so. Let's talk about hyper-converged. What is it? Let's start with that basic one, that basic definition, because maybe some of you have not had the experience or the exposure with it. And then I'm going to jump into this slide as well, this SDDC slide. So what is hyper-converged? Wow, that's a big word. So hyper-converged, as the word hyper, is an acceleration of a term called converged. And about 2009, two big companies, one Cisco and EMC, got together and kind of invented something. And this thing called converged. And that was really the essence of converged. And then many other great companies, including Dell, took that concept and built upon it. And so it became a converged. And the converged is taking a compute, networking, and storage and put it into one combined entity. Normally it's three different companies. I have not seen one company be able to do that. Put it into one rack, if you will, one big piece of equipment in a data center, and then make it easy to consume. So you did not have to build it yourself. Because up until then, you had to kind of put the pieces together, put that puzzle together. So in that converged architecture, it was a very large piece of equipment. It actually was very expensive. It took a really long time to build out and to understand because it's highly customizable. And it took quite a bit of time to get up and running. And then after you built it, everybody kind of came on in and filled it on up, and maybe if you're lucky, you might need another one because you're doing well. Well, there's expense to it, there's a time with it, there's still a little confusion because there's multiple companies associated with it. So then what happened was people looked at that, and they said, well, is there a better mousetrap? And there was. 2 years later, another bunch of smart people got together, and they coined this phrase called hyper-converged. And hyper-converged really came about by a lot of the companies you know already and probably use, the Facebooks of the world, the Googles, if you're in LinkedIn, if you're a commercial guy, if you're overseas, this thing called 10 cents. Matter of fact, if you think about that, these big giant clouds, these social media clouds, they could have done something that was consistent how other people do it, but they kind of invented their own way. And so companies started looking the way these guys were building out their infrastructure, and they kind of scrutinized and said, let me see if I can take the best of that, take the best of converged, kind of fuse it together, and then let's build something new. We'll call it hyper-converged. And so what is hyper-converged? Hyper-converged is something that is a much smaller footprint, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. So I'm going to hold off on that, but just think of that hyper-converged as a smaller footprint. Its big brother was converged, and then I have another slide coming on up where we'll dive in. So now at least you have an initial idea what we're talking about here. It is a computer, a server in your data center. It has a purpose to help out your consumers and customers. It has the drive of lower cost of ownership and things like that, and we'll dig into that. So now we're on this slide called SDDC, another acronym that I want to baseline everybody with. SDDC stands for Software Defined Data Center. I'll say it again, Software Defined Data Center. So what is a Software Defined Data Center? Well, for 12 plus years, most of you, because almost 80%, 90% of the world is using some form of what we call virtualization, right? And virtualization, the father of virtualization, the core, I'm happy to say is the company I work for, VMware. VMware invented virtualization, brought it to market. And so that's how servers are optimized. People use virtualizations to squeeze every bit of CPU and every bit of disk and memory to optimize and save money by using less. Well, SDDC is the realization of the other two legs of that stool. So we have the compute, right? And in your data center, if you walked into a data center, you'd look around, you'd see there'd be two other areas of a data center that are important to you. One would be storage, and the other would be networking. Storage is obviously where the data resides. Networking is how we all communicate. So SDDC is the realization of looking at virtualization on all three planes to recognize the ability to virtualize your network, virtualize your compute, and virtualize your storage, all three of them. And that's what SDDC is. Now, being that it's new and there's many different options out there, it could be quite confusing or quite challenging. Our company has focused heavily on trying to drive simplicity into that concept. And EVO Rail is the product that we designed, and I'm one of the founders of, looks at SDDC as the end game. And we're infusing SDDC building blocks in the EVO to demystify, to drive more simplicity into how you eventually get to an SDDC data center. And you might do it today. Some people are actually doing it right now. Some people might look down the road or 2 years or whatever. But whatever your timeline is, these building blocks are meant to really help you out there. Okay? So that's SDDC and hyper-converged. So what are the big things that you normally wrestle with every single day? There's normally three buckets. There's the setup, there's the provisioning, and there's life cycle management. These are the circle of life, if you will, in IT. And so when we started this out, and when I was sitting across in a boardroom and with a lot of whiteboard, we looked heavily at these three pillars. And we said, is there a better mousetrap to make our customers' life easy, or easier? I'd like to say easy, but easier in setting up, configuring, deploying, and managing. And we looked, and we looked, and we spent a lot of time at that. So when you look at this, these three different pillars, this is a cornerstone of our value prop. And I'm going to share with you a little bit more about that value prop in the next slide. So, so we have the value prop here, and we have VMware looks at the world in a fairly simplistic way, right? You can always, and we're very happy for those individuals who want to build for themselves. There's always those individuals who want to get into a garage or have such customization or some specific needs that they don't want to buy it off the shelf. They don't want that simplicity. They want to say, I want this customized for me. Maybe it's green with polka dots or whatever, in a sense of they want uniqueness because maybe they have a need, or maybe that's how they've always done it. We're okay with that. I already spent some time in this converged architecture where maybe you have other relationships. And hopefully you have a great relationship with Dell, for example. Well, you might have a relationship with Dell and you're using Dell networking or Dell storage, and all of a sudden you want to just kind of continue with the Dell relationship, which is awesome, and then you want to just sprinkle in some VMware or something else. That's the converge. That's like taking multiple great companies together and fusing them together in order to make it more simplistic to purchase. And then this new concept that we're going to spend some time in right now called hyper-converged, which is even making it more simplistic than the converged. Okay? So now we'll go to...
Mike, can I just jump in here real quick and just let everybody know that if they have any questions, they can use the Q&A feature on the interface to ask questions, and I'll take those and make sure that Mike or Matt get those to answer. Okay?
Great, thank you. I saw someone actually, that's a good tip, and they're saying the slide should be progressing. Right now, you should be on slide 7 if you're following around through WebEx. So we're on slide 7, which has the title VMware EVO Rail. If you're not seeing that, just let us know on the WebEx and we'll get that fixed, okay? So what is EVO Rail? It's a hyper-converged appliance. Hyper-converged appliance here. And so what I'll do here is, let's start with the basic, a building block, just like you build a house. It is a 2U, for those people, that's 2U, that's the footprint, its height, so it's very compact. And it has 4 nodes. What's 4 nodes? 4 independent servers. I stress the word independent because that's true. These are 4 independent servers residing in the same, I'd like to say, the tin or the skin. So there are 4 servers residing in a 2U footprint. That is the building block. That is actually what we believe to be the next generation building blocks within the data center. Why? Because it's very prescriptive. You're able to really understand the footprint, and we're able to then be very granular on the performance of that. So let me say to you how we envision this. VMware does not look at this as a server. When we invented EVO Rail, we said there's 2 challenges in life. Most people they wrestle with software and they wrestle with hardware. And then we leave it up to you as an individual to kind of make sure the 2 work together. So when there's a new piece of software comes out, you normally soak it in your test area, make sure it's up to date, make sure that it's working properly. And then once that happens, you then introduce it into the ecosystem. Well, that's good, and that's how we've done things up until now. What we do here with EVO is that we're extremely prescriptive. What we do is we only look at 5 things. We look at the CPU, we look at the memory associated with that CPU, we look at the disk, the controller, and the power supply, the 5 building blocks of a server. And what we did is we took these 5 building blocks and we looked at all the different ones that are out there around the world, and then we said, what's our end goal here? Our end goal was to build a domain, a simple building block that you can keep on adding on to very simplistically, and then de-risk you. So each of these building blocks on the left-hand side, you can see 1, 2, 3, 4. You can see it right down here. They represent 1 appliance. There you see 1 appliance. You can see my mouse moving here. Each of these appliances in here, they support 100 general purpose VMs or about 250 VDIs. And then you can add them. So 100, 200, 300, 400. It allows you to have that building block experience. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that building block experience real shortly. Okay, so then the next thing is, should we get out of this? Okay, let me get out of here. Oh, here we go. Okay, so then the next thing was, let's talk about what we are trying to achieve here when we're on the board. What we wanted to do is one thing is, A, from the very inception, when you get an EVO Rail appliance, which is 2U4 node, we want to have unbelievable experience, an Apple-like, that's a compliment to Apple, an Apple-like experience. So what we did is we spent, we'll say a good year studying the most common support calls you have made into VMware's GSS. So what we did what we call big data analytics. And we then looked at that and said, what are the most common configuration, deployment, and management challenges you have called in over the last 11 years? We stack ranked it. We had a lot of people look at it. And then we took those most common challenges and we walked over to our great developers and we put it on their desk and said, that was the easy part, and said, solve it. So what we did is in this EVO Rail engine, we have unbelievable, we'll say like an AI, artificial intelligence, that gets you up and running very fast. From the time you power this appliance on to the time you turn on your first VM, 15 minutes, just about. You hook up the cables, you fill in some very simple commands on the beginning of EVO Rail, and you're welcome to check it out on the web. And then at the very end, it validates them to make sure you haven't made mistakes, because once again, we did that big data analytics. And off it goes, it builds that cluster. And so then you have one appliance up and running, and it's running 100 general purpose VMs. And then we did this, and we have solved, and we have about 496, I think the number was, just under 500 of the most common challenges that we saw out there. And we're in like the mid-twos at this point. I mean, technology has to grow. So we have solved almost half of the most common problems in this product that we see in those phone calls. Okay? The next thing we wanted to do is, it's great that we can build it very fast, but you only do that once. So that's great. But that's a one-time event. There's a lot of value to it. I don't want to minimize it, but that one-time event. This next point, which I have right here, if you can see my mouse here, this non-disruptive patch upgrade right here, where you see my mouse, that is, I consider, the most important value of EVO Rail. Because in a non-disruptive patch and upgrade, because we only look at 5 individual things, what we do is we take every single time there's a security patch, every time VMware has a minor update, they have a security patch, we have a minor release, a major release. Anytime there's a driver change, because we're only looking at 5 things, disk, memory, controller, power supply, and CPU, right? We're able to do unbelievable deep regression testing. And then what we can do is, since we've now tested it and vetted the thing out, we push it out to you, and you can hit one button, and it'll seamlessly take down the appliance one node at a time and upgrade it for you. So you get the software up there, you take it into your infrastructure, you're now ready to upgrade to EVO, you execute it, it operationally takes down each of these nodes one at a time, it validates it, makes sure that the VMs are moved on over to the other remaining nodes in that appliance or in that cluster. It then upgrades it. Once again, it validates to make sure that upgrade has taken successfully, and then it rejoins the appliance, and then it goes round robin around the appliance in order to update the entire appliance. Once again, de-risking you from the fear of what happens when I try to do an upgrade. We spend a lot of time with that. The next thing, which is laws of 3 that we deliver, is one support call. How many times you have a challenge or an issue, you pick up the phone, and you're concerned, I don't know what it is. There's no longer a finger pointing in this situation. When you have a question, whether it's hardware or software, you pick up that phone and you call Dell. Dell represents both VMware and they represent the hardware that they sell in this situation. And VMware stands behind them in level 3 support. So if you have an issue, you speak to Dell. You don't have to make that decision. They can, if it's, God forbid, things happen at night, there's a breakage of a piece of equipment, a driver, controller, whatever it is, they come out to replace it. And then if there's a more technical issue and they need our help, we're right there behind them to support them. So you can see that simplicity that we're driving here across the whole entire product line. Let's go down here. Oops. Sorry here. Just take it off. Okay. So then, what are the general cases of what we see here? Because we've been doing this for some time now. So the most common one we see out here is general purpose. We see that being put into the data center. Normally it's in either in a corner of the network to run some particular thing, or in the case of OUSD, they're putting it out through the entire ecosystem, all the different schools and administration buildings in the whole entire facility. VDI is a tremendous use case for that. If you're using View, Horizon View is a big use case for VDI, desktops. We see a lot of remote branch offices, and we also see a lot of use in cloud. In cloud because you can put it up there as a next generation colo. Okay. So here's a little bit more detail of the purposes of what it's being used for. So we have general purposes, what, about 100 or so? So if you want to go over 100, that's a good question we hear a lot of times. We basically modeled this. We looked once again at our support calls and took the average sizing of VMs by our customer base, and we turned around and said, let's size the box appropriately. If you go on our website, we actually divulge what the average size VM we see out there. And then what we do is, if you have 101 or 150, it's up to you. But we size it appropriately. And we could have, to be totally transparent, we could have built this box to support 500 or 750. But what's the chance of someone having such an uber big box or need? We think that 100 appliance size is great for consumption. And then if you need another one, you get another one. So in this situation, it differs from converged, where you have to buy big and then use up. Here you buy as you need. So it saves a lot of money out there. Okay? We talk about 4 appliances. We started small. This thing will scale a lot larger. We have 4 appliances today, 8 tomorrow, and even something beyond that. So it allows you that flexibility to grow into this cluster. And you may not want to put all of them in one cluster. You might want to separate that. That's okay as well. You can have multiple clusters and still interconnect. The uptimes are very important to us. I talked to you about the uptime. This is what we call carrier type grade. What I basically mean is that we can have a full node failure because there's 4 nodes in there, and the appliance will stay up and running. You can lose hard drives and it'll stay up and running. You can lose a CPU and it'll stay up and running. It is very important to us to have strong uptime, and so we have engineered this into that product. On the VDI side, this is the View side. EUC, or View, VDI, represents about 50% of the most common use cases we have. I'll say it again. 50% of most common people use VDI. The other 50 is actually general purpose, and Robo. General purpose is depending upon the size of the company. Cloud is an upcoming market for us. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on the cloud stuff because I don't think the audience is really into that. So since you're not deep into the cloud right now, and you're not a cloud provider, that has a different need and different wants. So we'll hold off on that one, maybe for another day. So let's talk a little bit about the value, because at the end of the day, this is about you and your needs. So when and the team designed it, we focused on a couple things. Number one, I talked about this CapEx. CapEx, think of this as the dollar spend. Because this is a small building block, the price point to get in is much smaller. If you have existing licenses, we're working on that in the very near future that allows you to bring your own licenses. So we have a very flexible model that allows you to get access to it. And that simplicity on OpEx reduction is the next thing that I want to talk about. The UI interface, this EVO Rail engine, it does 3 things. It deploys, it configures, and it manages. So we spent a lot of time on the deployment side and the configuration. I want to spend a couple seconds on the management side. You have a lot on your plate. So inside of EVO Rail, we have built a very simplistic model that allows you to build and manage VMs. And then if you need, you can always go back to vCenter, which is a more sophisticated piece of software to manage, or vSphere Client to manage it as well. So for the daily person who has a lot on his plate, who may not be a very technical VM person, we have 3 sizes. It takes you through in a very simplistic way of a small, medium, large VM. It takes you through and it really distills the networking side of it. It looks at the security. It says what type of security protocol or what type of persona you want. And then you click it and bam, it builds that VM, making it really easy to build. It was important for us to leverage once again, and build upon stuff you know. So if you're out here, and you probably 80% of you know VMware, you know that that core software you've been using for the last 11 years plus, as far as we've been out, is in this. We did not distill, we did not disrupt. Because we're using VMware's vSphere and we're using some other key pieces of software, any of the scripts, any of the IP that you know is going to be used in it. You can use the EVO Rail engine one day and jump out and use vCenter the next day, or use vSphere Client. It sits on top of it. We did not duplicate any databases. We did not make it complicated in any way. So you can jump in as need be, or if you're not a very power user, leverage this interface and then jump outside of that in order to have a more sophisticated person. I talked a little about higher availability. High availability means it's hitless. And then, of course, faster time to market. That was very critical for VMware to be successful. So let's talk a little bit about here the Dell engineered solution. Okay, now I think, Matt, at this point, I'd like to toss it over to you. I believe you have a lot to talk about on this.
Absolutely. Thank you, Brad. Thank you, Mike, Brad, and Pat, for the opportunity to come and talk about our Dell engineered solutions. Just a quick background. My name is Matthew Kennedy. I am a data center engineer for Dell. I've been at Dell about 15 years, specifically working on the enterprise side. So I've seen the evolution of business, and I'm really excited to be able to come to you with this technology. And what is Dell doing with it? So if you'll just bear with me, I think the way that I want to run the next part of this slide is just to kind of give you an overview of why Dell, why the Dell EVO Rail solution. I want to kind of break down the infrastructure aspect. I won't get too technical, but I just wanted to kind of give you an overview of what the technology would look like, and then kind of close off with just, again, going over the value proposition of it. You know, I've been at Dell, like I said, for a long period of time. One of the things that drive us is our core philosophy about how technology can enable human potential. And, you know, that is a quote that Michael Dell said, and I've seen since I've been at Dell. I mean, it's plastered all over Round Rock, basically alluding to our strategy of taking a technology and delivering on a solution that can simplify the complex, make the powerful easy to use, and to drive out an efficiency. And all that coming back together to drive as much long-term value as possible for you, our end user. You know, I think one of the great examples of our goal in action of driving that simplicity is our partnership with VMware and EVO Rail. But before I wanted to go into the specifics of the Dell solution, you know, there are competitors out there that will also be delivering upon EVO Rail. So I kind of wanted to tell you about why I think Dell, it makes sense to go with Dell specifically on this solution itself. You know, so why Dell? I like to see us as a thought leader. You know, we've made some significant traction. We moved from a public company to a private company. We've acquired a bunch of technologies, and we're starting to generate a lot of these predefined configurations that we deliver to market to help simplify our lives, basically. So, you know, we see that technology can be a great human enabler, but you've got to have a technology that's easy to use and to get the capacity and the needs to market faster than just all the specific back-end minutia that we deal with on a day-to-day basis. So when we came to this software-defined reality that we're facing, if you look at the industry trends today, 2015 to 2017, everybody has some sort of concept of what software-defined is and where software-defined is going. So when VMware said, hey, listen, we're coming to the market with a hyper-converged solution, we, knowing what was going on in the market, said, yeah, we would like to be a part of that. And we were actually the first vendor to sign up for the EVO program. And what we're going to do through this program is we're going to offer a finely tuned integrated system that helps you maximize performance. And what I mean by that is this is a solution that was jointly developed with VMware and Dell engineers. So we take an award-winning platform like our C6220, which is one of our PowerEdge C portfolios, and we put VMware software on top of it, and we deliver it as an appliance. It was designed and optimized for these cloud-like environments, these very dense environments. We're going to be able to deliver on a hyper-converged platform that's optimal for density and cost ratio. Remember, you're going to see a lot of density inside of the server to you portfolio itself. That's a lot of server technology in a small form factor. We're also going to provide a single source of technical support and value-added deployment with all EVO Rail solutions that we send out there. So that's talking about consulting and managed services as well. And then, we're going to be able to, as an end-to-end solution provider, we're going to be able to give you capability around the whole stack. So if you look at EVO Rail as a VDI solution, we can couple that with our WISE purchase, our WISE technology purchase, one of the companies that we acquired in the last couple of years. And then on the back end, give you extra management capability around data protection, security, performance monitoring, and cloud management. So there's a lot that we can do from a company, from an end-to-end provisioning with EVO Rail as the infrastructure piece to deliver value to where you're going. So if we'll go to the next slide here. So one destination, three approaches. Mike kind of alluded this to earlier. Software-defined data centers are becoming a reality for a lot of my customers. And as a technologist, I want to be able to provide my customers the most efficient path to this next generation architecture. And that can be done in three different levels. And realizing where it is on the complexity scale and where you are in your environment, one size does not fit all in every use case. So if you look at the three different ways, the component-based, the virtual SAN ready node, and the hyper-converged infrastructure, you're looking on the bottom, you'll see an arrow. One offers you maximum flexibility, the other one comes back and offers you max ease of use, and that's driving simplicity. So when I look at software-defined data centers in general, the one thing that Mike mentioned, people have embraced compute virtualization significantly. Our end users have. It used to be that there was a problem. At one point, we introduced virtualization in the environment. It stopped at 30 to 40% virtualization because there was no kind of mechanism in the back to get our infrastructures up to 80% to 90% virtualized. Well, that's no longer the case. We are seeing infrastructures that are almost 100% virtualized, and that is great. But it also offers a level of complexity in your environment. We try to trying to eliminate that complexity. So if we look, we realize that some customers will go back and look at a component-based infrastructure, and that means that their infrastructure is so sophisticated that just offering another solution on top of it will not make sense for them. So they want to have maximum flexibility in how they configure their servers. And I think if I can step back real fast and look at software-defined data center, so we've moved forward really well with compute. The next thing that you've heard a lot in the industry around is software-defined storage. And if you look at our 13th generation portfolio that we just released from Dell, you're going to see some significant storage capacity added to a x86 infrastructure. Software-defined storage is becoming a reality because of the commoditization of the x86, but we're also seeing, that area where a storage device and a server device used to be separated is now grayed. So you see significant density on a server platform, and that's the reason why, we're able to offer these hyper-convergence solutions to you, because we've actually increased the capability of the compute itself. So you can go in from a component-based route to design your infrastructure. You take for example, our 730XD that offers multi-tiering storage inside of your servers. You can put 1.8-inch solid-state disks in. You can put 2.5-inch SAS drives in, getting a lot of capacity. You are in control on how you're delivering that mechanism. into your virtual environment. So this gives you the maximum flexibility, but with that, there's a lot of complexity that comes to it. So we realize that we're trying to minimize complexity. We realize that software-defined storage is becoming a reality. What could be the next step for individuals to take in this mergence into the software-defined storage? It would be virtual SAN-ready nodes. So what is a virtual SAN-ready node? You know, virtual SAN-ready nodes are a way for VMware and OEM hardware providers to provide you an infrastructure component that you can put into your environment, and it's already pre-designed and pre-tested to giving you specific criteria. So, for instance, if you were to look, if you just did a Google search on software virtual SAN-ready nodes, and I'm just trying to make sure this works, you're going to go out and do a Google search on VMware virtual SAN-ready nodes. And what you're going to find is a PDF that sits out there in the ether and basically lists out all the major hardware manufacturers that have these vSAN nodes. And what will happen is you'll look at this infrastructure and you'll say, okay, I want to be able to do virtualization, but I want to have a certain amount of raw storage available for vSAN, or I want to have a certain amount of server capacity to handle this many virtual machines. And what you're going to know is when you go out there and look, you're going to say, okay, there are three different settings. There's a low, medium, and high overall infrastructure piece. You know, you have up to for example, for us, there's up to 4 terabytes of raw capacity, 15 virtual machines. It'll be the R630, right? And what is valuable to you is you can take, it's predefined, it's pre-tested, pre-engineered, so you know what you're going to get. And remember, when we talk about virtual machines and we talk about just slicing up capacity, these are not infinite resources. These are finite resources. So we're saying this piece of infrastructure will deliver upon this much storage and this much virtual machine. So you go out there, you give the Dell representative a number, a Dell Start. We call it Dell Start. It's our quoting tool, a quoting number. You will be able to get that particular machine predefined, pre-tested, and delivered to your environment. And then finally, if we go back and look at, so that's getting us to, you know, we've virtualized compute, we're virtualizing storage, but now we want an infrastructure that may deliver all of this at the easiest route possible, and that's where we get into the EVO Rail solution. And EVO Rail is one of those very, very easy to use infrastructures, and you're going to see that in the next couple slides on how we design that, particularly to get it to market to you faster and get you up and running faster. So there is a bunch of different ways to get to software-defined data center. It could be you're doing compute and you're wanting to move into you know, just software-defined storage. Well, for you, virtual SAN-ready nodes might be the best route. But if you want to go into, you know, design an infrastructure that's completely contained and you have the scalability out there, you will move and start looking to an EVO Rail solution. So the general specifications, again, I don't want to spend a lot of time here, but what I do want to talk about, again, is the density perspective of the server. So you are looking at, of course, this is just a graphical representation. It doesn't look like a server that we actually have available. But as Mike said, there are 4 servers inside of a 2U system. And this EVO today, you can add up to 4 virtual appliances into a cluster. That's a lot of capacity, and you're going to see that on the next slide. But what it allows us to do, and if you look at the overall capacity that we'll be able to offer you, you know, you're going to be, per appliance, you're going to get, like Mike said, you'll get about 100 VMs. You know, for a VMware Horizon VM, you're going to get about 250 desktops per appliance. And you're going to get a virtual data store of about 13.1 terabytes. Now, that's just for one of those 2U infrastructures. You combine that total, you're going to have 4 appliances, you're going to have 16 servers, you're going to have up to 400 VMs, you're going to have up to 1,000 Horizon VMs. It just depends on the infrastructure itself, and a total virtual SAN data store about 52.4 terabytes. So with that, you're thinking about this as an infrastructure. That is a huge infrastructure. This could be, if you were to look at the industry and just compute in general and see how much capability we're getting with, you know, the next generation of Intel processors, you know, up to 36 cores in a 2-socket system, and then you have up to 1.5 terabytes of memory, and then you couple out a lot of storage. You have a lot of capability inside that infrastructure itself. So you are looking at 5 years ago, an infrastructure that may have been 5 racks, you're going to be able to consolidate it down into 1 rack, or maybe even 1 appliance based on your need. So that's just, again, showing you that the density is there, the performance is there, and the ability to deliver this capacity to you is there, and it's a very powerful story. The next slide here. As Brad Mike also alluded to, this is really designed for the most simple mechanism to get an infrastructure up and running into your environment. EVO is beautiful from the fact that if I have a customer that struggles just to maybe have generalists in their environment and they struggle to maintain their entire environment, I want to eliminate as many tools and as many steps as possible to get that infrastructure up and running. When you go to an EVO rail system, it is as easy as 4 steps. The first step is you set up your networking details, you give it an IP address, and you give it your VLAN IDs. The second step is you're setting up a couple of credentials. The third step is you're setting up a DNS server or NTP server, and then the fourth step you're just adding a couple other global parameters, and then you're up and running. And this is all GUI driven. Right? So again, this is trying to taking a piece of infrastructure and getting to market as fast as possible. And as Mike alluded to, you have this capability within 15 minutes to get a complete infrastructure up and running. That is unheard of. And after that, deploying VMs is just as simple as pointing and clicking. You go out and you click on a VM. You build a host. The VM have their pre-sized templates inside this overall portal. You'll be able to point and click and then deploy. That's how easy this infrastructure will make your life as you move forward and you're looking at this next generation of the data center. So not only is it easy to implement and use, and it eliminates all the complexity of deploying and maintaining a virtual environment, it scales. So remember, today, EVO taps out at 4 appliances. And as mentioned earlier, you can see that that's a pretty significant chunk of VMs or desktops, depending on what you're going to use it as. Dell is going to go to market with 2 different solutions. One is a virtual infrastructure solution, specifically for workloads and virtual infrastructure. The other one will be for virtual desktops. So you're going to, when you come to a Dell rep, that'll be the conversation that we have. But you can see there's significant density here, and that density is only going to get better as we see the next generation come on. Remember, one of the things that is enabling such infrastructure is not only dense compute, but the ability to scale linearly and take advantage of the performance. As Mike mentioned, convergence has become a reality because why? People were adopting 10 gig technology from an infrastructure perspective. It used to be one of those things that was very expensive to go look at a networking pipe of 10 gig. That has been commoditized. People were in the small and medium business all the way to the small business or small school systems are able to go back and reevaluate their infrastructure needs because the 10 gig pipe has been commoditized. We're seeing significant density again inside of the servers themselves, giving you a lot of storage capability. You're seeing people leverage SAS technology and bypass the SAN route. So is EVO, could you consider EVO Rail a SAN killer? Absolutely, you can see it as a SAN killer because it's allowing you to tap into the capacity of the servers, pulling all of the storage together and delivering it as a significant storage block. So everything is here. Everything is here for this data center in the sky. It's amazing because I think really I can see this happening in the next 6 years. Software-defined data centers are reality for 99% of all IT users. I mean, that's just me, and I don't have a crystal ball, but it's the way that we're delivering it and the way that we're getting it to market faster is greatly accelerating the way that you'll be able to handle the infrastructure moving forward. So let me just touch real quick, and then I'm going to hand it back to Brad around the summary. The technical value of this solution will significantly bring operational expenses down. You're going to have a consistent hardware experience because from one generation of server to the next, it's for us specifically, it's based on the 6220 right now. Moving forward, we're going to see other portfolio of our products enter into the market space in here. It is going to be the most energy efficient server on the market, the dense server on the market, and the ability to just minimize your operational costs that are associated with implementing your environment, the time it takes you to manage, the time that it takes you to update, all of that is there from an operational savings. We're saving you time that also saves you money at the end of it. So the other side is the CapEx savings. The server and storage economics that we talked about, servers are becoming dense with cheap storage. You're going to see a time, and I forgot to mention this, where solid-state disks are going to be price parity with SAS. So you're going to see significant IOP capability, significant density at a lower price. So you're going to have a very robust infrastructure that will adapt to your application needs. It's going to be pay as you grow. Again, you start out with one appliance and then you can grow up to 4. Faster deployments, again, this goes back to the fact that it's all GUI driven, that you hit a couple of features, you do about 4 parameters, and you're up and running in your environment. It's an awesome way to execute on the next generation data center. Simplified procurement, it's easy. Like I said, you can do it in multiple ways. It is a bundled solution. It's one SKU. That goes even with the vSAN configurations. We try to make it as easy to get the technology in your environment and get it up and running. And again, offering you a building block of the future. This is just the first step in the next generation. There are going to be more technologies that we add on top of it. We're going to add features. We're going to give you greater capability. And I'm just really excited because this is a game changer in the industry. This technology is changing the way that we're delivering IT to everybody, and that is incredible to me. So with that said, that's all I had. I know that was really fast, and that was just a high-level overview of our product, and I kind of went all around everywhere. But I wanted to open it back up to Brad, and Brad, take over.
Yep, all right, that's terrific, Matt, thanks. And just in the last few minutes we have here, a couple of questions came in. Matt and Mike, just jump in. First question is, how does EVO Rail work with existing infrastructure?
Yeah, I'll start and grab that one, and Matt, I'll toss it over to you.
Okay.
EVO is not toxic. I'll say it again, it's not toxic. When we designed this, we did not want to set it up so it's a rip and replace. So if you have an existing infrastructure, be it a SANs or networking equipment, 95% of the time it will seamlessly fit within it, and that's where you can work with Dell and their great technical people to help put it into your infrastructure. But once again, it was not our intention to go in and have you have to write off or get rid of your existing investments. This is a new form that would fit in there that would work symbiotic with your existing infrastructure. Matt, is there anything you'd like to add to that?
I think that's a great point, and I really like the fact that when you look at a technology like EVO Rail, it's based on standards. It's all standard-based equipment, so it should be able to work with your existing environment. Like I've seen some conversation pieces that I've had where you want to separate your infrastructure. You just want to have a separate infrastructure for VDI instances. You want to manage them on their own. It's not. It's a disruptive technology in the way that we deliver, but it's not a disruptive technology in how you're going to interact with your current environment. It's not a rip and replace infrastructure piece.
Great. Okay, and then there's just one other question. Can this be managed through a single pane of glass?
Yeah, Matt, I'll grab that one as well. So obviously, you'll probably start off. Actually, most people start off with 2 appliances. But when you have multiple appliances, and maybe it's a school district or maybe a commercial, and they are spread out across a greater or larger WAN, in Q1, we'll have a point-and-click single pane of glass where it will launch. So you can list all your EVO Rails globally, and you can click on that identity, and it will take you right to that EVO Rail for you to manage. In Q3, which is just near VMworld, which is probably about the August timeframe, we will have a management-like interface that will boil up events from each EVO and kind of sit there. So for those people who are very specific to EVO and want to have a holistic look and have more details, you'll have that as well. And of course, the last thing is that if you already have a management system, maybe a great Dell system or some other third-party system, and you want EVO to fall into it, it's, as Matt has mentioned several times, it's an open architecture, so it seamlessly fits into your existing investments, whether it's VCOps, VCAC, or other third parties. Matt, is there anything else you'd like to add to that?
No, that's perfect, and that's one of the reasons why I want to position this with my end users is because everybody is looking for a single pane of glass to manage their environment. That's one of the things that we look for when we're driving simplicity in systems management. So to have the ability to go and drive the infrastructure from a single GUI is just a strong selling point with me.
Great. Matt, Mike, thanks so much. Really appreciate it. Just a real quick 10-second commercial for Data Networks. Our mission is to simplify enterprise IT for our customers. We're a VMware enterprise solution provider. We've got expertise in server virtualization, operations management, network virtualization, desktop virtualization, and software-defined storage. And we're also a Dell Premier partner with competencies in servers, storage, data protection, and desktop virtualization. So obviously we can help you with all of your virtualization, VMware, and Dell-related solutions.